Hello, good morning to everyone. First of all, many thanks, Francesco, for your extremely kind words that you have devoted to me and to the CMC. For us, it has been such a great pleasure to be here in this training project in Tunisia. We have cooperated before with Archicon in other projects in Jordan, in Israel, and in other countries in the Mediterranean area. And it was always a pleasure, and this project was not an exception. You are the boss of this training project. You asked me to be very brief and to devote only 8 minutes in my presentation, and I will try to follow your instructions. As I'm going to present the report that CMC prepared on market analysis, and more particularly on the procedure to analyze markets. This report was prepared in 2015, and it was a request of the ENT, which asked CMC to provide some input in a moment where the ENT was initiating the market review process. We prepared a document which I'm not going to present because it's a very long document with a lot of information, but of course it's included in this book that we have prepared for you. My presentation will be focused in 2 points. One, I will go very briefly to the European framework for the regulation of markets. And the second part, I will present some suggestions made to the ENT or to the Tunisia more in general about how the framework on market analysis could be updated in order to take the best of the European practices. Of course, it is up to the ENT and to ask to the Tunisian legislator to take the account of these suggestions, of course. So, thank you. It's important to present, the framework because the European framework, because it's the only way to understand the suggestions that we have made. So, basically, the market analysis process in the European Union was introduced in 2002 and is an essential pillar for enabling competition in the European telecom markets. The general aim of the ex-ante regulation is to ensure effective competition on the market to the benefit of the consumers. The basic rules of ex-ante regulation are: the first one, and probably the most important, is only regulate, only intervene in the market if there is a problem, if there is a competition market. So, before imposing any ex-ante regulation, any remedies, the NRAs must analyze their markets, their telecommunication markets. The obligations can only be imposed if significant market power is found. So, if we find that there is no competition in the market, this is the moment in which we can intervene. The second rule is about the degree and the intensity of the ex-ante regulatory intervention, which has to be proportional to the competition problem. If there is a market which is competitive, there is no need to intervene. In Europe, that means that the regulatory intervention should mostly focus at the wholesale level, and only in case that is not working, this intervention at the wholesale level, we should try to address the problem at the retail level. The third rule or characteristic of this model is that the market analysis procedure is in accordance with the principles of the competition law, from the very definition of the market to the assessment of the market power, to the identification of the remedies to address the competition problems. Another rule is that, or principle, is that this model is technologically neutral. This means that there is no discrimination in favor of any particular technology. So the model considers the products and markets on the basis of their economic value rather than their physical or technological characteristics. In this model, the regulatory authorities plays a crucial role because they are responsible of carrying out the market analysis and also to choose the remedies to be imposed in this market if we find that there is a lack of competition. Please, yeah. Maybe you can move a little bit further. So, yeah, thank you. The basic concept of the regulation of markets is very simple, and it's based on 3 stages. The first step is to define the relevant product and geographic markets, as it corresponds to the first chart or whatever market definition. The European Commission gives an answer in its recommendation of the relevant products and services market. This recommendation identifies the markets that the European regulator must analyze in Europe. Actually, the recommendation, which the last one was adopted in 2014, identified 4 markets candidates for ex-ante regulation, which are only wholesale markets. For other markets not listed in the recommendation, the NRAs can apply the 3 criteria test in order to assess if this market is susceptible to ex-ante regulation. The second step to analyze the markets is to assess whether the competition is effective. In this stage, several indicators are taken into consideration. For instance, the market shares, the control on infrastructure not easily to duplicate, economic size of scale and scope, etc. In case that the NRA comes to the conclusion that no effective competition exists, at least one operator has to be designated as having SMP. And finally, in the third step, at least one appropriate regulatory remedy has to be imposed on the SMP operators. The telecom rules provide regulators with a toolkit of remedies which give them the flexibility to design appropriate remedies to tackle any market failures. It's important to say that obligation imposed should be proportionate and justified and based on the nature of the problem. For wholesale markets, I would mention some of the remedies that could be imposed, for instance, the access, non-discrimination, transparency, etc. And for the retail markets, the obligations may include the price control or cost accounting. It's important to highlight that the transparency, the framework introduces some provisions to ensure the whole transparency of the project. For instance, the measures to be taken for one NRA has to be submitted to a national public consultation before their adoption. And the national authority has also to inform to the European Commission and the other regulatory authorities of the measure intended to take. So this is basically the main principles of the European regulation for the analysis of markets. And I will go very briefly to the benefits of this model that this model has brought to Europe. This model has ensured a consistent approach regarding market definitions and the assessment of the SMP across Europe. The model has brought some economic analysis to the market review process. And the model also increased the regulatory transparency. For the telecom companies, the procedure gives the legal certainty as to know how and under what circumstances they will be regulated and ensure that regulatory practice is consistent across Europe. And very importantly, for the new players, provides a framework which allows them to enter into the market and compete fairly with the more consolidated operators. And really important, as I said, is that this project increases really the transparency of the decisions and making of the regulators. So, moving to the last part of, sorry, it's not working? Yep, sorry? Oh. Yeah, okay. So these are basically the characteristics of the European model and the benefits that this model has brought to the European telecom sector, but also to the consumers. We have taken some of these benefits and these characteristics of this model, and we have put it in the report that we prepared with the suggestions for the ENT focus on providing some input to them about how to improve the market procedure in Tunisia. Firstly, we believe that the basic rules of ex-ante regulation should be clearly enshrined in the legal framework. This is that before imposing any ex-ante regulation, the NRAs must analyze their national markets. And the second main principle is that obligations can only be imposed if we find SMP in the market. The second set of suggestions addresses the reinforcement of the powers of the authority. We believe that the NRA, in this case INT, must be, the powers of the INT, must be accorded correlative to the complex character of the economic, factual, and legal situations that will need to be assessed during the process of market analysis. This also includes the reinforcement of the sanctioning regime to prevent operators, for instance, for not supplying the adequate information for market analysis purposes. And finally, the ENT should reinforce also the powers to obtain the information necessary, including confidential information. The last, please come on. The last set of suggestions are focused on the need to maximize the transparency and legal certainty. Before starting the procedure, undertakings should be aware of the definition procedures to assess SMP. That means that it should be ensured that the undertakings, that operators are fully involved in the project since the beginning, that they know the procedure, they know the framework, and they're aware of the definition indicators that ENT is going to use during the whole process. The second one, we believe that it would be beneficial to introduce in the framework an obligation to publish public consultation and to adopt reasoned decisions. In our view, the proposal of SMP and remedies should be submitted to public consultation, and this would include to provide information about the market definition and the reasons behind this particular definition, the evidence relating to the finding of dominance, and the remedies to be adopted. That was my presentation. Before giving the floor to Francesco and the rest of the colleagues, I would like to say just some few words in French. please forgive me, it's so bad my French, okay? En guise de conclusion, je souhaite adresser un remerciement chaleureux à tous les collègues de l'INED qui ont travaillé sur ce projet et ont fait preuve d'un grand professionnalisme. Je remercie spécialement M. Hichem Bespes, le président de l'instance, pour l'école et l'engagement pour mener à bien ce jumelage. In English, I would like also to thank you to Joaquin, our first secretary, to the official, to the Economic Affairs Spanish office here in Tunisia, which has provided an excellent support to all the experts. And of course, a final thank you to Alejandra Iturriaga, my head, which really supported the project since the beginning, and also to Maria Lopez Carracelas, the director of the International Affairs of CNC, which also believes in this project. Thank you very much.